Emily Chen had worked at the Grandview Hotel for 6 years, and in that time, she'd seen it all. Abandoned luggage, unpaid bills, couples fighting in the lobby at 3 a.m., but nothing, absolutely nothing prepared her for the morning she opened the reservation system and found a name that shouldn't exist. Marcus Weatherby. Room 412. Check-in date? 3 years ago. Checkout date? Never. The system showed him as an active guest, yet housekeeping reported the room empty for years. When Emily pulled up the old records, her blood ran cold. Marcus Weatherby had died in that room. She'd been there.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The fluorescent lights of the Grandview Hotel lobby hummed with their usual monotonous drone as Emily settled into her morning shift. Tuesday mornings were always quiet. The business travelers had already checked out, and the weekend tourists wouldn't arrive for another 3 days. She liked these slow mornings. They gave her time to organize, to think, to exist in the predictable rhythm she'd carved out over 6 years behind this marble reception desk. Emily was 32 years old and had never planned to stay at the Grandview this long. When she'd first taken the job, fresh out of a failed marketing career and a messier divorce, she'd told herself it was temporary, just until she figured things out. But temporary had a way of becoming permanent when you stopped looking for exits. She booted up the ancient reservation system, watching the green text populate against the black screen. The Grandview prided itself on being a classic establishment, but classic was often just another word for outdated. The hotel had resisted modernization with stubborn determination, keeping its analog charm even as newer hotels in downtown rose with their sleek glass facades and automated check-ins. The morning routine was sacred to Emily. Check overnight reports, review today's expected arrivals, prepare keys for early check-ins, and respond to any emails from management. She'd perfected this dance, moving through each task with the muscle memory of repetition. But today, something was different. The system was running slower than usual, the cursor blinking lazily as it loaded the guest registry. Emily tapped her fingers on the desk, glancing at the lobby clock. 7:45 a.m. She had 15 minutes before the breakfast service ended, and guests would start trickling down with questions about local attractions and taxi services. When the screen finally loaded, Emily's fingers froze mid-reach for her coffee cup. Room 412, Marcus Weatherby. Status, occupied. Check-in, October 15th, 2022. Check-out, none scheduled. Emily blinked, certain she'd misread. She leaned closer to the screen, her heart beginning a slow, uncertain rhythm against her ribs. October 15th, 2022. That was 3 years ago. Nearly to the day. She clicked into the detailed view, her movements mechanical, disbelieving. The record showed continuous occupancy. No checkout date, no end date. The room charges had accumulated into the hundreds of thousands. Room rate, taxes, service fees, all unpaid, all accumulating like some digital ghost growing fatter with each passing day. But that was impossible. Emily had been working the front desk on October 15th, 2022. She remembered that day with the kind of clarity reserved for trauma. That was the day that Marcus Weatherby died. She'd been the one who checked him in. A distinguished man in his late 50s, silver hair perfectly combed, wearing an expensive wool coat despite the mild autumn weather. He'd been polite, efficient, asking for a quiet room on a high floor. She'd given him 412, a corner room with a view of the city park. He'd thanked her with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. 2 days later, housekeeping found him. Heart attack, the coroner had said, quick and painless. He died in his sleep, still in his business suit, as if he'd lain down for just a moment and never woken up. The police came, asked routine questions, took statements. Emily had provided the check-in details, shown them the security footage, given them his credit card information for notification purposes. The hotel was somber for weeks afterward. Marcus Weatherby had no immediate family. The police discovered this during their investigation. He'd been a successful investment banker, wealthy and well-traveled, but ultimately alone. His firm had handled the funeral arrangements. His belongings had been packed and shipped to some distant cousin in Oregon.
Room 412 had been professionally cleaned, blessed by a priest at the manager's insistence, and returned to circulation. Emily had personally processed his checkout in the system. She remembered clicking the button, watching his name disappear from the active guest list, moving to the archived records where it belonged. So why was Marcus Weatherby still listed as a current guest? She navigated to the room status screen. Room 412 showed as occupied. But the housekeeping notes told a different story. The room had been marked as vacant and cleaned every single day for the past 3 years. No guest items reported, no service requests, no disturbances. Emily's coffee had gone cold. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for the phone. Dialing housekeeping. "Maria, it's Emily at the front desk. Quick question. Do you have any notes about room 412? Maria's cheerful voice crackled through the line. "412. That's been empty all month, honey. Why?" "All month? What about longer? Has it been occupied at all?" A pause. "Let me check the log." The sound of pages turning. "No, nothing. Last guest we had in there was, back in August. Family of 4, stayed for 3 nights. Before that, it was empty most of the summer. That room doesn't get booked much. People say it has bad energy." Emily knew why. Word had spread among the staff about Marcus Weatherby's death, and superstition had a long memory in the hospitality industry. Even guests seemed to sense something, often requesting different rooms when assigned to 412, without knowing its history. "Thanks, Maria." Emily hung up before the housekeeper could ask follow-up questions. She pulled up the security footage archive, her fingers clumsy on the keyboard. The Grandview security system was more modern than its reservation software, installed after a theft incident 4 years ago. She navigated to the 4th-floor camera, the one positioned to capture the hallway leading to room 412. She scrolled through footage for the past week. The hallway remained empty except for housekeeping staff making their rounds. No one entered or exited room 412. She checked the past month. Same result. She went back 3 months, 6 months, a year, always the same empty corridor, the same untouched door. But the system insisted Marcus Weatherby was inside. She checked his payment information next. The credit card on file was still active. The charges had been processing automatically every night for 3 years. Every single night, at precisely 11:59 p.m., the system charged the daily room rate to his card, and every single night the transaction went through successfully. Emily grabbed a notepad and scribbled the credit card number, then called the hotel's accounting department. "Financial services, this is Kenneth."
Kenneth, it's Emily from the front desk. I need you to check something for me. We have charges processing for a guest in room 412, Marcus Weatherby. Can you tell me if there have been any disputes or chargebacks on his card? Weatherby. Okay, got it. Wow, this account has been active for a while. No disputes, no chargebacks, payments processing normally. Wait, this is strange. Emily's grip tightened on the phone. What's strange? The billing address. It's listed as the hotel address. That's not right. And the card issuer shows as Estate of Marcus Weatherby. That's a banking trust designation. Usually means the cardholder is deceased and the account is being managed by... He is deceased, Emily interrupted. He died here 3 years ago. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, carefully, Emily, if the guest is deceased, why are we still charging his account? That's what I'm trying to figure out. This could be a serious problem. If someone realizes we've been charging a dead man's estate for 3 years... I know. Listen, can you freeze the charges while I investigate? I'll put a hold on the account now, but Emily, you need to talk to Mr. Reeves about this. This is way above our pay grade. David Reeves was the hotel manager, a perpetually stressed man in his early 60s who treated every problem like a potential lawsuit. Emily dreaded the conversation, but Kenneth was right. She found Reeves in his office, hunched over a spreadsheet with the intensity of a man trying to find money that didn't exist. The Grandview had been struggling financially for years, squeezed between rising operational costs and declining occupancy rates. Mr. Reeves, I need to talk to you about room 412. He can look up from his computer. What about it? It's showing as occupied in our system by Marcus Weatherby.
Now he looked up. His face went pale. "That's not possible." "I know, but it's there, and we've been charging his estate account for 3 years." Reeves stood so quickly his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Show me." They returned to the front desk together, and Emily pulled up the reservation system on the main terminal. Reeves leaned in close, his breath smelling of coffee and antacids. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his jaw working silently. "This is a system error. It has to be, some kind of glitch." "I thought so too, but the charges have been processing. Every night. For 3 years. The money's been going through." Reeves ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Jesus Christ. Do you know what kind of liability this creates? If his estate realizes we've been charging a dead man's estate for 3 years?" "I know. Listen, can you freeze the charges while I investigate?" "I'll put a hold on the account now, but Emily, you need to talk to Mr. Reeves about this. This is way above our pay grade." "There was something else," Emily said quietly. "The signature on file, the one from when he checked in 3 years ago, it matches perfectly with a new entry dated yesterday." Reeves stopped pacing. "What?" Emily pulled up the digital signature log, a feature that had been added 2 years ago when guests started checking in via tablet. But somehow the system had retroactively applied the feature to old accounts, storing historical signatures in its database. There, side by side on the screen, were 2 signatures. One from October 15, 2022, captured on the old paper check-in form and scanned into the system. The other, dated October 14, 2025, yesterday. They were identical. Not similar, identical. Every loop, every angle, every pressure point matched with the kind of precision that suggested they'd been signed by the same hand at the same moment. But that was impossible, because Marcus Weatherby had been dead for 3 years. Emily stared at the dual signatures until they blurred together, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes confirmed. Dead men don't check into hotels. Dead men don't sign registration forms. But the evidence was undeniable. Someone or something had accessed the system yesterday and replicated Marcus Weatherby's signature with impossible accuracy. As Reeves muttered about lawyers and liability, Emily's gaze drifted to the corner of the screen, where another detail lurked, small and devastating. Room 412's door had been opened 16 times in the past 3 years, always at night, always at exactly 3:17 a.m.
Reeves insisted on seeing the room immediately. Emily grabbed the master key card, her hands unsteady as she programmed it for room 412. The elevator ride to the 4th floor stretched in uncomfortable silence, Reeves muttering under his breath about system audits and technical failures, while Emily's mind raced through increasingly impossible explanations. The 4th floor hallway greeted them with the same sterile quietness that characterized most of the Grandview's upper floors. Beige carpet, cream walls, brass sconces emitting warm yellow light. Nothing sinister, nothing unusual, just a hotel hallway like thousands of others across the country. Room 412 sat at the end of the corridor around a corner that created a small alcove, the corner room. Private. Isolated. Emily approached the door slowly, acutely aware of her heartbeat. The brass numbers, 412, gleamed under the hallway lights. She pressed her ear against the door, feeling foolish even as she did it. No sound from within, no light visible under the doorframe. "Well," Reeves cut impatiently, "open it." The keycard reader blinked green when she waved the master key. The lock mechanism clicked. Emily turned to the handle and pushed. The door swung open to reveal an empty room. Not just empty, pristine. The bed was made with military precision, white sheets pulled tight without a single wrinkle. The curtains were drawn back to reveal the morning sun streaming through clean windows. The desk held nothing but a leather-bound hotel information binder. The bathroom door stood open, showing spotless white tile and neatly folded towels. Reeves stepped inside, flipping on the overhead light, though the room was already bright. He checked the closet, empty. He looked under the bed. Nothing. He opened the bathroom, checking the shower, the cabinet under the sink. "You see," he said, turning to Emily with visible relief. "It's empty, just like it should be. System error, that's all this is." But Emily had noticed something. The air in the room felt different. Not cold exactly, but stale, like a space that hadn't been opened in a long time, despite housekeeping's daily logs claiming otherwise. She walked to the window and touched the glass. Her finger came away dusty. "When was the last time housekeeping actually came in here?" she asked. "They log it every day," Reeves replied, but his voice carried less certainty now. Emily ran her finger along the desk surface. More dust, not thick, but present. She checked the bathroom. The towels were folded, but the fold lines looked old, set in. The soap was still wrapped. The toilet paper point that housekeeping always created was absent, the roll hanging loose and slightly unraveled. "Mr. Reeves, this room hasn't been serviced in weeks, maybe longer." Reeves pulled out his phone and called housekeeping. Emily listened to his side of the conversation, watching his expression shift from irritation to confusion to something darker. He hung up. "Maria says they stopped servicing this room 6 months ago. Said there was a note from management to leave it alone, to mark it as cleaned, but not to enter." "Did you issue that note?" "No." Reeves' face had gone from pale to gray. "And there's no one above me who would have. The owners are hands-off. They haven't set foot in this hotel in 5 years." They stood in the middle of room 412, surrounded by emptiness that somehow felt occupied. Emily moved to the bedside table and pulled open the drawer. Inside lay a single item, a leather wallet. Her breath caught. She recognized it immediately. Brown leather, worn at the corners with a small embossed monogram in the corner. M.W. Marcus Weatherby. With trembling fingers, Emily opened the wallet. Inside was his driver's license, expired 3 years ago. Credit cards bearing his name, a few crisp $100 bills, a photo of a young woman, blonde and smiling, standing on a beach somewhere tropical. "That's not possible," Reeves whispered. "The police cleared out all his belongings. They packed everything up. I watched them do it." Emily remembered that day, too. She had stood in the lobby while 2 officers carried boxes down from the 4th floor, boxing up a dead man's final possessions. She had seen them load everything into their patrol car. She had signed the inventory list confirming the room had been emptied. Yet here was his wallet, left behind. Or returned? "Maybe they missed it," Emily said, but she didn't believe her own words. Reeves took the wallet from her hands, examining it as if he could make it disappear through sheer force of will. "We need to call the police." "And tell them what? That a dead man's wallet appeared in a room that's supposedly empty for 3 years, that our system shows him as a current guest, that his credit card has been charged nightly without dispute? Those are exactly the things we need to tell them." Reeves was already dialing. "This is beyond our ability to handle. There's fraud here or theft or what?" Emily challenged. "What's the explanation that makes sense?" Reeves didn't answer because he didn't have one. Neither did I. The police arrived an hour later. 2 detectives, Rodriguez and Chen. No relation, Emily clarified awkwardly. They listened to the story with professional skepticism, examined the wallet, took photos of the room, and reviewed the computer records with the kind of methodical patience that suggested they'd seen strange things before. Detective Rodriguez was a compact woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. She studied the dual signatures on Emily's screen for several minutes, zooming in on the digital images until individual pixels became visible. These could be printed. Someone scans the original signature, prints it on a new form, fakes a check-in. "But why?" Emily asked. "What's the motive? The room generates charges that are being paid. No one's stealing money. No one's staying in the room." "That you know of," Detective Chen interjected. He was younger, maybe early 30s, with the kind of casual demeanor that seemed at odds with this situation. "You said the door has been opened 16 times at 3:17 a.m. Over 3 years. Someone's been entering this room."
Emily pulled up the door access logs on her phone, which she had synced with the hotel security system. Chen was right. The pattern was precise and unmistakable. Every 2 months, sometimes every 3, the door to room 412 recorded an access at 3:17 a.m. The key card used registered as the master key, but not Emily's specific card or Reeves's. It showed as master key, general, suggesting one of the universal backup keys kept in the hotel safe. "Who has access to your backup keys?" Rodriguez asked. Reeves listed them: himself, Emily, the night manager, and the head of housekeeping. 4 people, all longtime employees, all supposedly trustworthy. The detectives conducted interviews with each staff member over the next several hours. Emily sat through her own interview in the hotel's small conference room, answering questions about the night Marcus Weatherby died, about access to the computer system, about any odd occurrences over the past 3 years. She told them everything she could remember, but the truth was that nothing strange had happened. The Grandview was a quiet hotel in a quiet part of the city. Their problems were mundane: low occupancy, aging infrastructure, occasional difficult guests, not mysteries involving the dead.
By evening, the detectives had concluded their preliminary investigation with no clear answers. The wallet would be taken as evidence. The room would be sealed. They'd monitor the door access to see if anyone tried to enter again. They'd investigate the credit card charges and the estate account. But honestly, Rodriguez said as she prepared to leave, this feels like an elaborate hoax or a very specific kind of fraud we haven't encountered before. Someone's playing games, possibly an ex-employee with a grudge or a tech-savvy thief testing vulnerabilities in your system. It was a logical explanation. Emily wanted to believe it, but as she walked the detectives to the lobby, she couldn't shake the feeling that logic had left the building the moment Marcus Weatherby's name reappeared in their system. That night, Emily volunteered to work late, taking over the graveyard shift from the usual night manager who was grateful for the unexpected time off. She told herself she wanted to be present in case the police needed anything else, but the truth was darker and more curious. She wanted to see if something would happen at 3:17 a.m. The hotel settled into its nighttime rhythm. Late check-ins trickled in, a family with a crying baby, a businessman who looked too tired to be traveling. By midnight, the lobby was empty except for Emily and the dim glow of the computer screens. She made coffee, strong and black, and settled in for the wait. The security monitors showed empty hallways on all floors. The 4th-floor camera revealed nothing unusual. Just the familiar corridor, the corner leading to room 412, all quiet and still. 2 a.m. came and went. 2:30. 3. Emily's eyes felt heavy, despite the caffeine. The lobby's silence pressed against her ears, broken only by the hum of the ice machine down the hall and the occasional creak of the building settling in. 3:15 a.m. She sat up straighter, her attention fixing on the 4th-floor monitor. The hallway remained empty. Nothing moved, nothing changed. 3:16 a.m. Emily's heart began to race, her body responding to anticipation her mind hadn't fully acknowledged. Her eyes darted between the monitor and the digital clock on the computer screen. 3:17 a.m. The 4th-floor hallway stayed empty. The door to room 412 remained closed. No light appeared under the frame. No figure emerged from the shadows. Nothing happened. Emily exhaled slowly, caught between relief and disappointment. Maybe the pattern had been broken. Maybe police presence had scared off whoever had been accessing the room. Maybe the reservation system chimed. Emily's gaze snapped to the screen. A notification had appeared. Room 412, service request. Her finger hovered over the mouse, trembling. She clicked the notification. The request was simple, typed in the system's standard format. Extra towels needed. The request had been submitted from inside room 412, from a room that was supposedly empty. A room the police had sealed, a room that no living person should be occupying. Emily stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. The lobby suddenly felt enormous and exposed, the shadows in every corner deepening. She grabbed her phone and called Detective Rodriguez's number, the one she'd been given for emergencies. It went to voicemail. She tried Detective Chen, same result. Her hand shook as she called Reeves, but he didn't answer either.
It was 3:20 in the morning. Everyone was asleep, living their normal lives, unaware that Emily was standing in a hotel lobby watching something impossible unfold on a computer screen. The service request remained on the screen waiting for acknowledgement. Hotel protocol demanded a response. Housekeeping should be notified, towels delivered, guest satisfaction maintained. But there was no guest. There couldn't be. Emily's training warred with her instincts. She should wait for the police. She should wake up Reeves. She should do anything except what she was about to do. But she grabbed the master key card anyway. She grabbed a stack of fresh towels from the housekeeping closet. And she walked to the elevator, pressing the button for the 4th floor. Because sometimes the only way through impossible situations was to meet them directly. The elevator doors closed behind her with a soft chime, and Emily rose toward room 412 carrying towels for a guest who had been dead for 3 years. The 4th floor greeted Emily with oppressive silence. The hallway stretched before her like a throat, the cream walls seeming closer than she remembered, the brass sconces casting shadows that flickered despite steady bulbs. With each step toward room 412, the temperature dropped, imperceptibly at first, then noticeably, until she could see her breath misting in the air. The towels felt heavy in her arms, absurdly normal against the growing wrongness. When she rounded the corner to the alcove, she froze. The door to 412 stood open, just slightly, just enough, and from within came a sound, someone humming.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emily's rational mind screamed at her to run. Every horror movie, every true crime podcast, every survival instinct bred into human DNA over millions of years demanded that she turn around, get back in the elevator, and leave the building entirely. Instead, she stood frozen in the hallway, clutching towels and staring at that partially open door. The humming continued, a soft melodic sound without words. It wasn't threatening. If anything, it sounded peaceful. The kind of absent-minded tune someone might make while reading or working. Hello? Emily's voice came out smaller than she intended. Hotel staff, I have the towels you requested? The humming stopped. Emily's grip tightened on the towels, her knuckles white. The silence that replaced the humming felt worse somehow, loaded with attention and awareness. Please leave them outside the door, a voice called from within the room. A man's voice. Cultured. Calm. Polite. Emily recognized it instantly. She'd heard it 3 years ago, on the day Marcus Weatherby checked in, on the day he'd smiled at her and thanked her for the room with the view, on the day before he died. The towels fell from Emily's hands, hitting the carpet with a muffled thump. Her legs felt unstable, her vision narrow into a tunnel focused solely on that open door. That's not possible, she whispered. A pause from within the room, then, Emily, is that you? He knew her name. Of course he knew her name. She had introduced herself when he checked in. She'd given her statement to the police. Her name was on every piece of official documentation related to his death. But hearing her name spoken in that voice, from that room, shattered something fundamental in her understanding of reality. You're Ted, Emily said, louder now. You died. I was here. The coroner confirmed it. Another pause. Then the door opened wider, slowly, and a figure stepped into the doorway. Marcus Weatherby looked exactly as Emily remembered. Silver hair, expensive clothing, warm eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He appeared solid, real, casting a shadow in the hallway's light, not translucent, not ghostly, just a man standing in a doorway. I'm sorry for frightening you. That wasn't my intention. I've been very careful not to disturb anyone. Emily's back hit the hallway wall. She hadn't realized she'd been retreating. This isn't real. You're not real. I'm hallucinating. I'm having a breakdown. You're not. Marcus remained in the doorway, making no move toward her. You're perfectly sane. This situation is unusual, but you're perceiving it accurately. Unusual?
The laugh that escaped her throat bordered on hysteria. Unusual is a guest complaint. Unusual is a plumbing problem. Dead people don't check into hotels. I understand this is difficult to process. Difficult to process? Emily's voice rose, echoing in the empty hallway. You died. I processed your checkout. The police took your body. Marcus's expression shifted to something resembling sadness. They took a body, yes, but Emily, I need you to think carefully about that day, about what you actually saw versus what you were told. The question anchored Emily, forcing her mind away from panic toward memory. She rewound 3 years, pulling up that October morning in detail. Housekeeping had found him. Maria had called the front desk in tears. Emily had gone upstairs with Reeves. They'd stood outside room 412 while paramedics and police filled the hallway. She'd never actually entered the room. She'd never actually seen the body. I saw the coroner's van, Emily said, but her voice carried less certainty. You saw what they wanted you to see. What I needed you to see. Why? The question came out as a plea. Why would you fake your death? Why stay here? Why the charges, the signatures? The door access had 3:17 in the morning. Marcus stepped fully into the hallway now, and Emily flinched despite herself, but he moved past her, walking to the window at the end of the corridor. He stood there, backlit by the city lights, looking out over the sleeping city. 3 years ago, I made a terrible mistake, he began. I was an investment banker, as you know. What you don't know is that I discovered fraud at my firm. Massive, systematic fraud that affected thousands of clients. Retirement funds drained, life savings stolen, all legal, technically, hidden in complex financial instruments that most people couldn't understand. Emily remained against the wall, listening despite her terror. I tried to expose it through proper channels. I went to the SEC, to the FBI, to journalists. But my firm had connections, money, lawyers. Every avenue I pursued hit a wall. And then I started receiving threats. My apartment was broken into. My car was tampered with. I realized they were going to kill me before I could testify. So you faked your death, Emily said, slowly, understanding beginning to crystallize through her shock. I paid people. Not good people, but necessary people. A morgue attendant who provided a body, a John Doe who died naturally with no family to claim him, a corrupt cop who followed the right paperwork, a sympathetic doctor who signed a death certificate. It cost me everything I had, but it bought me invisibility. But why stay here? Why this room? Marcus turned from the window, his face etched with exhaustion that seemed to go beyond physical tiredness. Because I'm not done. The evidence I gathered is still here in this room. Documents, recordings, prove that I've spent 3 years compiling. The firm thinks I'm dead, so they've been careless. I've been tracking their moves, building an airtight case, but I need time. Emily's mind raced through the implications. The credit card charges. You set up the estate account to process automatically, so there'd be a money trail proving that you were dead, but also funding your hiding. Exactly. And I knew eventually someone would notice, would investigate. I was counting on it. That's why I left my wallet yesterday. Why I submitted the service request tonight. I needed someone to find me, but I needed it to be the right person at the right time. Why me? Because you're observant. You're compassionate. And because 3 years ago, when I checked in here, you looked at me and saw a person, not just a transaction. I remembered that. I remembered you. Marcus walked slowly back toward Emily. I need your help, Emily. The evidence is ready, but I can't come forward alone. The people I'm exposing are powerful. They'll discredit me, claim I'm a fraud, that the death certificate is fake, which it is. I need someone credible to verify I've been here, that I'm real, that this isn't some elaborate con. Emily's thoughts spun. The police are already investigating. Detectives were here today. They have your wallet.
I know. I watched them on the security feeds. Rodriguez and Chen, good cops, but they're treating this as fraud, not whistleblowing. If they discover me without context, without the full story, they'll arrest me for insurance fraud, for financial crimes related to faking my death. The real criminals will walk free. So what do you want me to do? Marcus pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. "Tomorrow morning, I need you to contact the FBI directly, not the local office. They might have been compromised. Contact the main financial crimes division in Washington. Tell them everything. Give them this drive. It contains everything. Transaction records, emails, recorded conversations, forensic accounting that proves the fraud. But they need to understand the context. Why I went into hiding. Why this hotel has been my sanctuary." Emily stared at the USB drive like it was a snake. Taking it would make her complicit. Taking it would validate the impossible situation unfolding around her. Taking it would mean choosing to believe a dead man standing in a hotel hallway. But it would also mean possibly helping thousands of people who'd been defrauded. It would mean justice if Marcus was telling the truth. "How do I know you're real?" Emily whispered. "How do I know this isn't some elaborate delusion I'm having?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Reach out and touch my hand. I'm as real as you are." Slowly, trembling, Emily extended her hand. Her fingers met his. Warm, solid, undeniably physical. She pulled back as if burned. "I'm real," Marcus confirmed. "And I'm asking you to trust me, even though I'm asking you to believe in something impossible." Emily looked down at the fallen towels, at the USB drive Marcus still held extended toward her, at this man who shouldn't exist. She thought about her 6 years at the Grandview, about the routine that had become her life, about the safety of asking no questions and making no waves. She thought about Marcus Weatherby dying alone in this room, or pretending to, and spending 3 years in hiding to expose people who stole from those who couldn't fight back. She took the USB drive. "I'll contact the FBI tomorrow," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But Marcus, you need to understand, if this is a con, if you're using me—" "I'm not," he interrupted gently. "And after tomorrow, I'll be gone from here. The room will finally be empty. Truly empty. The ghost will be laid to rest." Emily nodded, pocketing the drive. She bent to pick up the fallen towels, an absurdly normal action in an absurd situation. When she straightened, Marcus had already stepped back into room 412. "Thank you, Emily. For everything. For being kind to a stranger 3 years ago. For being brave enough to investigate tonight. For choosing to help." The door closed softly, the lock clicking into place. Emily stood alone in the hallway, clutching towels and processing what had just happened. The temperature had returned to normal. The hallway lights burned steady. Everything looked exactly as it had before. Except now Emily carried evidence of a massive financial fraud in her pocket and the knowledge that reality was far more flexible than she had ever imagined. She made it back to the elevator on shaking legs, pressing the button for the lobby with the finger that still trembled from touching a dead man's hand. The ride down felt like descending from one reality into another, and when the doors opened to the familiar marble and brass of the Grandview's ground floor, Emily wasn't sure which world felt more real. She returned to the front desk, set down the towels, and stared at the computer screen where the service request still waited. With mechanical precision, she marked it as completed. The request disappeared from the queue, leaving behind only the standard log entry that would be archived and forgotten. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of automated responses and racing thoughts. She processed a late check-in without remembering the guest's face. She answered a phone call about reservations without hearing the questions. Her hand kept moving to her pocket, confirming the USB drive was still there, that she hadn't imagined its weight. When her replacement arrived at 7 a.m., Emily left without her usual goodbye, walking out into a morning that looked exactly like every other morning, but felt fundamentally different. The sun rose over the same city,
Traffic moved through the same streets. But Emily Chen was no longer the person who had clocked in yesterday, content with routine and asking no questions. She went home to her small apartment, but sleep was impossible. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and the USB drive, staring at both for nearly an hour before finally inserting the drive into the port. The files opened to reveal exactly what Marcus had promised. Years of meticulous documentation, spreadsheets tracking fraudulent transactions, email chains showing executives discussing how to hide losses in offshore accounts, recorded phone conversations where senior partners laughed about stupid clients who don't read the fine print, forensic accounting proving money had been systematically siphoned from retirement accounts into personal holdings. It was damning, it was comprehensive, and it was real. Emily pulled up the FBI's website and found the contact information for the Financial Crimes Division in Washington. She drafted an email, deleted it, drafted another. How do you explain this situation without sounding insane? How do you lead with, "I met a dead man in a hotel," and expect anyone to take the evidence seriously? In the end, she kept it simple. She was a hotel employee reporting suspected financial fraud. She had received evidence from a protected witness who feared for his life. She was providing documentation and requesting immediate investigation. She attached the files from the USB drive and included her contact information. Her finger hovered over the send button for a long moment. Sending this email would change everything. It would bring investigators, questions, media attention. The grand view would be in the spotlight. Her quiet life would be disrupted. But thousands of people had lost their savings. Marcus Weatherby spent 3 years in a hotel room, sacrificing his entire life to build this case. And Emily had been given a choice to help or to look away. She clicked send. The response came faster than Emily expected. Within 2 hours, her phone rang with a Washington, D.C. area code. Within 6 hours, 2 federal agents were sitting in her apartment, examining the USB drive with expressions that shifted from skepticism to alarm. Within 12 hours, the story broke. Marcus Financial Group executives arrested in a massive fraud scheme. But the news reports mentioned nothing about a dead man or a hotel room. They spoke of an anonymous whistleblower, a protected witness, evidence that had been gathered over years. Emily watched the coverage and understood. Some truths were too strange for public consumption.
The Grandview Hotel became an epicenter of controlled chaos over the following 72 hours. Federal agents swept through the building, interviewing staff, examining records, documenting everything about room 412. The media camped outside, trying to connect the dots between a downtown hotel and a financial scandal that was unraveling to reveal fraud totaling over $300 million. Emily gave her statement to so many different agents and officials that she lost count. Each time she told the same story, carefully edited. She'd discovered irregularities in the hotel's reservation system. She'd investigated and found evidence of someone using the hotel for long-term residence under false pretenses. That person had been gathering evidence of financial crimes. She'd contacted the FBI as soon as she understood the situation. She never mentioned that the person was Marcus Weatherby. She never mentioned that Marcus Weatherby was supposed to be dead. The federal agents who'd received the USB drive seemed to understand the delicate nature of the situation and kept those details sealed. Detective Rodriguez returned to the hotel on the 3rd day, finding Emily at the front desk during an afternoon shift. The detective looked exhausted, her sharp suit slightly rumpled, her eyes carrying the weight of revelations. "We need to talk," Rodriguez said quietly, "somewhere private." They went to the same conference room where Emily had been interviewed days before. Rodriguez closed the door and leaned against it, studying Emily with an expression that mixed frustration and reluctant respect. "The FBI told us to close our investigation, said it was connected to a federal case and that we should step back. They were very clear about it." Emily said nothing, waiting.
But before we close the case, I did some digging on my own time. Rodriguez pulled out a folder, setting it on the conference table. Marcus Weatherby's death certificate, the coroner's report, the police report from 3 years ago. I read them very carefully. Emily's heart rate increased, but she kept her face neutral. The body that was removed from room 412 3 years ago was identified through personal effects and circumstantial evidence. No fingerprints were taken. No dental records were checked. The coroner signed off based on the assumption that a man in that room with that name's identification had to be that man. "What are you saying?" Emily asked carefully. "I'm saying the body was never definitively identified. I'm saying that if someone wanted to fake their death, this is how they do it, with a cooperative coroner, a look-alike body, and the assumption that no one would dig deeper." Rodriguez opened the folder, revealing documents Emily couldn't read from her position. "I'm also saying that the financial crimes the FBI is investigating all trace back to Weatherby Financial Group, where Marcus Weatherby worked for 23 years before his supposed death." Emily remained silent. "And I'm saying that sometimes, when someone is fighting against powerful people, they have to disappear to stay alive long enough to expose the truth." Rodriguez closed the folder. "I'm not asking you to confirm anything. I'm not recording this conversation. I just want you to know that I understand what probably happened here and why the FBI is protecting their source." "Why are you telling me this?" Emily asked. Rodriguez smiled slightly. "Because you're a civilian who got pulled into something dangerous, and you handled it with remarkable courage. Because I think you've been carrying the weight of an impossible secret, and I want you to know that at least one cop gets it." She pushed off from the door. "Also, because if Marcus Weatherby is alive somewhere, I want him to know that not all of us are corrupt. Some of us would have helped him if he'd given us the chance." The detective left, taking her folder and her understanding with her. Emily sat alone in the conference room, feeling a weight lift that she hadn't fully acknowledged carrying. The media storm continued for another week, then gradually subsided, as it always did, moving on to the next scandal, the next crisis. The executives from Weatherby Financial Group were indicted on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. Their trials would take years, but the evidence was so overwhelming that even their expensive lawyers couldn't find angles for defense. Life at the Grandview slowly returned to normal, or what passed for normal. Room 412 was finally released from police custody, professionally cleaned, and returned to the inventory. To everyone's surprise, it started booking regularly. The notoriety had made it popular. Guests specifically requested the room from the news, though none of them knew the full story. Emily processed these reservations with the same professional courtesy she'd always maintained, but she never volunteered for shifts where she'd have to enter that room. Some experiences left marks that didn't fade with time. 2 months after the initial incident, a letter arrived at the hotel, addressed to Emily Chen, marked personal. The front desk supervisor brought it to her during a morning shift, raising an eyebrow at the lack of return address. Emily opened it in the break room, her hands steadier now than they'd been that night in the 4th-floor hallway. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "Emily, thank you for your courage. The truth is coming to light, and thousands of people will recover at least some of their losses because you chose to help. I wanted you to know that I'm safe, far from here, living under a new name in a place where I can finally rest. The Grandview will always hold a special place in my memory, not because I hid there, but because I met someone there who restored my faith in human decency. You chose to believe in the impossible, and that choice changed everything. With deepest gratitude, M.W." There was also a check made out to Emily Chen for $50,000. A note attached to it read, "Your courage should not be unrewarded. This is a fraction of the reward money I received for exposing the fraud. Please accept it, and please use it to chase whatever dreams you've been putting on hold." Emily stared at the check for a long time. $50,000. Enough to finally finish her degree. Enough to travel like she'd always wanted. Enough to start over somewhere new, or to stay here and finally afford the life she'd been barely maintaining. But more than the money, the letter itself felt like closure. Marcus Weatherby was alive, was safe, was free. The nightmare that had begun 3 years ago in room 412 had finally ended, not with death, but with justice. Emily deposited the check that afternoon. She gave her 2 weeks' notice to Mr. Reeves, who had been expecting it. She enrolled in online courses to finish her marketing degree, something she had abandoned years ago when life had gotten complicated. And on her last day at the Grandview, she did something she'd been avoiding. She took the master key and went up to room 412. The room was empty, scheduled for cleaning before the next guest arrived. Emily stood in the doorway, remembering the terror of that night, the impossible conversation, the choice that had changed her life. The room looked exactly like every other room in the hotel. Unremarkable, impersonal, just another space for temporary occupation. There were no ghosts here, no lingering presence, no evidence of the 3 years Marcus Weatherby had spent hiding within these walls. But as Emily turned to leave, she noticed something on the desk that hadn't been there before. A small leather bookmark embossed with the initials M.W. She picked it up, smiling slightly. Some part of Marcus would always remain here, a reminder that ordinary places could hide extraordinary stories, and that ordinary people could become part of something remarkable. Emily pocketed the bookmark and left room 412 for the last time, closing the door on one chapter of her life and walking towards whatever came next.
But Emily's story wasn't quite finished. 3 weeks after leaving the Grandview, she received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end was female, young, uncertain. "Miss Chen, my name is Sarah Morrison. I'm Marcus Weatherby's daughter. I know this sounds strange, but I need to talk to you about my father, not about the fraud case, about something else, something he told me before he disappeared. Something about the hotel that I think you need to know, because I don't think my father was alone in room 412. I don't think he ever was."
Emily met Sarah Morrison at a coffee shop near her apartment, far from the Grandview and the media attention that still occasionally flared around the financial scandal. Sarah was in her late 20s, blonde with her father's warm eyes and careful manner. She clutched a coffee cup with both hands as if drawing comfort from its heat. "Thank you for meeting me," Sarah began. "I know this must be strange. My father told me about you, about how you helped him. He said you were braver than most people would have been." "Your father did the brave thing," Emily replied. "I just made a phone call." "It was more than that." Sarah set down her coffee. "But that's not why I asked to meet. There's something my father told me, something he made me promise not to share until after the trials concluded. They wrapped up last week, all guilty verdicts. So now I can tell you." Emily felt a familiar flutter of unease. "Tell me what?" Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling to find something, then turned her phone to show Emily a photograph. It was an old picture, maybe 15 or 20 years old, showing a young woman in a hotel uniform standing beside a man in a business suit. The woman was laughing at something the man had said, her face bright with genuine happiness. The man was younger, but unmistakable. Marcus Weatherby. And the woman. Emily's breath caught. The woman was Maria, the head of housekeeping at the Grandview. "My father and Maria knew each other from years ago. Before I was born, before he married my mother, they were close friends, maybe more than friends, though my father never gave me details. When he needed to disappear, she was the one person he trusted completely." Emily's mind raced backward through 3 years of interactions with Maria, the cheerful housekeeper who had been at the Grandview for over 20 years, who had access to master keys, who created the housekeeping schedules, who could mark rooms as cleaned without anyone questioning her authority. Who was the one to find Marcus's body 3 years ago? "Maria helped him fake his death," Emily said slowly. "She did more than that. She protected him for 3 years. She's the one who brought him food, supplies, everything he needed. She's the reason the room was marked as serviced but never actually entered. She's the reason no one questioned the irregularities." Sarah's eyes held a mixture of gratitude and sadness, and she did it all while never telling anyone, never slipping up, never revealing the secret. "Why are you telling me this now?" Sarah's expression grew more serious. "Because Maria is dying. Cancer. She has maybe 3 months left, and she asked my father to ask me to tell you the truth because she wanted you to know that you weren't just helping my father that night. You were helping her too."
The words didn't make immediate sense. I don't understand. Maria kept my father's secret for 3 years at enormous personal risk. If anyone had discovered what she was doing, she could have been arrested, charged as an accessory to fraud, to filing false reports. Her entire life could have been destroyed. But she did it anyway, because she loved my father, because she believed in what he was doing, and because she's the kind of person who helps when help is needed, no matter the cost. But how did I help her? By forcing the issue, by discovering the truth and bringing in the FBI before my father's evidence was complete. My father was a perfectionist. He would have stayed hidden for another year, maybe 2, gathering more evidence, making absolutely certain the case was airtight. Maria knew this. She also knew she was sick, that time was running out, and that she wanted to see justice done before she died. Emily felt the pieces clicking into place. The wallet I found, the service request at 3:17 a.m. Those weren't accidents. Maria left the wallet. Maria submitted the service request from room 412 using the computer terminal in the housekeeping office. She knew you were working that night. She knew you're observant enough to investigate. She orchestrated the entire discovery because she needed someone else to find my father, to push him to act before she ran out of time. She could have just told him to come forward. She tried. He refused, said it wasn't ready, wasn't perfect. You know how stubborn brilliant people can be. Sarah's smile was sad. So Maria took matters into her own hands. She created a situation where my father would have no choice but to share his evidence or risk everything being discovered on someone else's terms. Emily thought about Maria. Always cheerful, always efficient, always in the background of hotel operations. She'd worked with the woman for 6 years and never suspected the depths beneath that sunny exterior. Does Maria know I'm aware of her involvement now? Emily asked. She does, and she'd like to see you if you're willing. She's at home now, hospice care. She said she has something she wants to give you. Sarah wrote down an address on a napkin. No pressure. I know this is a lot to process, but she doesn't have much time, and I think would mean a lot to her. Emily took the napkin, staring at the address written in Sarah's neat handwriting. Another impossible situation, another choice to make. But this time the choice felt easier. I'll go today, Emily said. Maria's house was a small bungalow in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that spoke of a life lived simply and contentedly. Sarah met Emily at the door, leading her through a tidy living room to a bedroom where Maria lay propped up on pillows. Thinner than Emily remembered, but with the same bright eyes. Emily, Maria said, her voice weaker but still carrying warmth. Thank you for coming. Emily sat in the chair beside the bed, unsure what to say. Sarah told me everything. I didn't know. All those years working together, I never suspected. That was the point. The best secrets are hidden in plain sight, and the best help is given without fanfare or recognition. Why did you do it? Risk everything for Marcus? Maria's smile was complicated, layered with decades of history Emily would never fully understand. Because 30 years ago, Marcus saved my life. Not dramatically, not heroically, just by being kind when I needed kindness, by offering friendship when I had none, by seeing me as a person worth knowing. When he needed help, how could I refuse? But 3 years of your life were the most meaningful years I've had. I wasn't just hiding a man in a hotel room. I was helping to expose corruption that hurt thousands of people. I was protecting someone I loved. I was being useful in a way that mattered. Those 3 years gave my life a purpose beyond clean sheets and folded towels. Emily understood that more than she expected. Her 6 years at the Grandview had been about hiding, too, in their own way. Hiding from ambition, from risk, from the possibility of failure or success, until Marcus Weatherby's impossible reappearance had forced her out of that comfortable hiding place. I have something for you, Maria said, gesturing to the nightstand. Sarah handed her a small jewelry box, which Maria opened to reveal a simple silver necklace with a small key pendant. This was the master key I used to access room 412. I had it made into a necklace after everything ended. I want you to have it. Maria, I can't. Please. Maria's eyes held a gentle insistence. You were the final piece of the plan I'd been building for months. You were brave enough to investigate, compassionate enough to help, and strong enough to carry the weight of an impossible truth. This key represents 3 years of secrets, but it also represents the courage to unlock those secrets and bring them to light. That's your story too, Emily. Not just mine. Emily accepted the necklace, the weight of the key pendant settling against her palm. It was warm from Maria's hands, solid and real. "There's one more thing," Maria said. "Something I need you to know because you're going to find out eventually, and I'd rather it come from me." She paused, gathering strength. Room 412 wasn't just where Marcus hid. It was where I met him 30 years ago, when I was a young housekeeper and he was a young businessman. It's where we fell in love, where we had one perfect weekend before life pulled us in different directions. When he needed to disappear, that room felt like fate. The revelation added another layer to the already complex story. Emily thought about room 412, about how it had been the site of so many intersecting moments: love, death, hiding, revelation, justice. An ordinary hotel room that had contained extraordinary human experiences. "Does Marcus know you're telling me this?" Emily asked. "He does. We talk every few days. He wanted you to know the full truth because you're part of this story now, whether we intended it or not." Maria's breathing had become more labored. Sarah moved to adjust her pillows, but Maria waved her off. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." Emily stood, not wanting to exhaust the dying woman. "Thank you for trusting me with this. For trusting me with everything. Thank you for being trustworthy. The world needs more people who choose to help even when helping is difficult, who choose truth even when truth is complicated." Emily left the bungalow with the necklace in her pocket, her understanding of the past 3 years fundamentally rewritten. The story she'd thought she'd known about a dead man in a hotel room had been incomplete. The real story was about 2 people who'd loved each other decades ago, whose paths had diverged and then unexpectedly converged in a moment of crisis, who'd risked everything for justice and for each other. And Emily had been the catalyst that brought their 3-year vigil to its necessary end.
Maria died 3 weeks later, peacefully in her sleep with Sarah and her family surrounding her. Emily attended the funeral, standing in the back as colleagues from the Grandview spoke about Maria's dedication, her kindness, her decades of exemplary service. No one mentioned Marcus Weatherby. No one spoke of room 412. The secrets remained sealed, known only to a few. But after the service, Mr. Reeves approached Emily with an envelope. "Maria left this for you, said to give it to you after. Inside was a letter in Maria's handwriting, shakier than Emily remembered, but still legible. "Dear Emily, by the time you read this, I'll be gone, and I hope that means I'm finally reunited with all the people I've loved and lost. But before I go, I wanted to leave you with some thoughts that I hope will serve you as you continue your journey. You might think that the story of Room 412 is extraordinary, something that happened once and will never happen again. But I've learned that every room in every hotel, every desk in every office, every ordinary place where ordinary people spend their days holds the potential for extraordinary stories. We just have to be willing to see them. For 30 years, I made beds and cleaned bathrooms and smiled at guests who rarely looked twice at me. I was invisible in the way that service workers often are, present but not noticed, essential but not valued. But I was never just a housekeeper. I was a woman who'd loved and lost, who'd made choices that shaped lives, who'd kept secrets that mattered. You were never just a receptionist. You were a woman capable of incredible courage, of believing in impossible things, of choosing to help even when helping was frightening. That capability didn't appear when Marcus revealed himself. It was always there, waiting for a moment that required it. I orchestrated that moment not just to help Marcus, but to help you too. I saw in you what I'd been 30 years ago. Someone hiding in a comfortable routine, someone afraid to risk the safety of invisibility for the uncertainty of significance. You needed someone to force your hand, to create a situation where you had to choose between safety and courage. You chose courage,
And in doing so, you didn't just help expose financial fraud or save a man's life, you discovered that you were capable of more than you'd believed. That discovery is worth more than any reward money, more than any career success, more than any external validation. The necklace I gave you isn't just a memento. It's a reminder that you hold the key to your own story. You can choose to unlock doors or to leave them closed. You can choose to investigate mysteries or to accept convenient explanations. You can choose to help or to walk away. In the weeks and months and years ahead, you'll face other moments that require courage. They probably won't involve dead men in hotel rooms. Most extraordinary moments look quite ordinary from the outside. They'll look like opportunities you're not sure you're ready for, conversations you're afraid to have, changes you're not certain you can handle, kindnesses that cost more than you think you can afford. In those moments, remember that you are the woman who confronted a ghost at 3 a.m. because someone needed towels. Remember that you are the woman who chose to believe in the impossible because the impossible turned out to be true. Remember that you are capable of more than you know. Marcus and I both spent time hiding. Him in room 412, me behind a cheerful facade and a housekeeping cart. Our hiding served a purpose, kept us safe, allowed us to do necessary work. But hiding forever is just another form of dying. Eventually, you have to step into the light, even if the light is terrifying. You've stepped into the light. Stay there. The world needs more people who are brave enough to be visible, to be vulnerable, to be fully themselves even when being themselves is difficult. Thank you for being the kind of person who made our gamble worth taking. Thank you for your courage, your compassion, and your willingness to believe in the impossible. With all my love and admiration, Maria. Emily read the letter 3 times, standing in the parking lot of the funeral home as other mourners dispersed to their cars and their lives. Each reading revealed new layers, new gifts that Maria had left behind. She thought about the past 3 months, how she'd left the Grandview, finished her degree, started applying for marketing positions with companies that excited her. How she'd been braver in job interviews, more willing to advocate for herself, more confident in her abilities. How she'd reconnected with old friends, started dating again, begun building a life that felt full rather than just safe. She had attributed these changes to the money that Marcus had given her, to the financial freedom that allowed her to take risks. But Maria's letter revealed a deeper truth. The money was just a tool. The real change had happened that night in the 4th-floor hallway when Emily chose to carry towels to an impossible guest. Everything since then, every brave choice, every moment of growth, every step away from comfortable routine, had flowed from that first choice to investigate rather than ignore, to help rather than retreat. Emily clutched the letter and the necklace, understanding finally what the story of room 412 had actually been about. It wasn't about financial fraud or dead men checking into hotels or elaborate conspiracies. It was about 3 ordinary people, a banker, a housekeeper, and a receptionist, who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances and chose to be more than their roles required. Marcus could have fled the country or accepted defeat when his whistleblowing failed through official channels. Instead, he chose to disappear and fight from the shadows, spending 3 years gathering irrefutable evidence. Maria could have refused to help, protected herself, chosen safety over loyalty. Instead, she risked everything to shelter a man she had loved, to support a cause she believed in, to make her final years meaningful. And Emily could have ignored the irregularities in the computer system, could have waited for morning to investigate, could have called the police when confronted with the impossible. Instead, she had carried towels to a ghost and chosen to believe in something she couldn't explain. 3 ordinary people, 3 extraordinary choices, and a result that brought justice to thousands of defrauded investors, exposed systemic corruption, and changed the trajectory of multiple lives. Emily started her car and drove home, but not to hide. She drove home to rest, to reflect, and to prepare for whatever came next. Because she understood now that her life wasn't about one dramatic moment in a hotel hallway. It was about all the smaller moments that would follow. The daily choices to be brave, to be kind, to be more than circumstances required. The key necklace went around her neck, settling against her skin with a comfortable weight. She wore it to job interviews, where interviewers invariably asked about it. She told them it was a reminder that she held the key to her own story, that she had learned to unlock doors rather than leave them closed. 6 months after Maria's death, Emily started a new job with a marketing firm that specialized in ethical business practices and corporate transparency. It felt like the right fit, like a continuation of the story that had begun in room 412. She worked with companies that wanted to do better, wanted to be honest, wanted to prove that business and ethics weren't mutually exclusive.
And sometimes, late at night, when she was working on a difficult case or facing a challenging decision, Emily would touch the key necklace and remember: dead men checking into hotels, impossible conversations in empty hallways, a housekeeper who'd kept a secret for 3 years, a choice to carry towels to a ghost. She'd remember that ordinary places held extraordinary stories, that ordinary people could become part of something remarkable, and that courage was simply the choice to help even when helping was difficult. The key to that change had been there all along, waiting for someone willing to use it. Emily wore her key every day, a silver reminder that she was that someone, and that she always had been.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.